I'm going to take you through some modifications that you can make to the 45-degree hip extension to bias the glutes with a better stimulus. I have a lot of props here that I can make modifications to this piece of kit. You may not want to use all of them, but I'm going to run through using all of them so that you can experiment and find what works best for you. The 45-degree hip extension seems to vary hugely between the different brands, so this is probably one to work on in your home gym with a piece of kit that you're going to be using on a regular basis, because each modification in each different gym is going to require a different setup. So the first thing I'm going to start with, this 45-degree hip extension specifically is very low to the ground. So I'm going to take 2 plates and elevate the feet up a little bit. So I have a little bit of an elevation now that's going to give me a bit more depth in my hip hinge. The second modification I'm going to make is again to do with the dimensions of the piece of kit. So my legs, I want the pads to hit just below my hip hinge. So first of all, I'm going to adjust that. This is my home gym, so I happen to know that it's going to be on the second one for me, but we can maybe explore and see where is going to be optimal. So here, if I now put myself onto this piece of kit, the pad is coming up too high. But if I lower this down even further, I still don't quite get what I want with a bent knee. I'm still ending up with my hip crease directly aligned with the top of the pad. The next thing we need to check is where this pad is going to hit us on the thighs. So if I stand onto the platform as it is available to me, I actually want to use a bent knee to work with this position. But if I take this bent knee position and take myself down, what I find is that the pad is hitting me at the bottom of my ribs. So as I come up, the hinge is really going to be a back extension here. So in order to adjust that, it might be enough that you can move this pad down a little bit. So let me check that as I work into a bent knee. And I find that it's now hitting not the bottom of my ribs, but the line of my belly button. So this machine is telling me that my legs are too short. But what I can do to adjust that is I can put some yoga blocks or a platform of some sort. And I want to try and make these as stable as possible, because the nervous system really doesn't like to get completely into the exercise unless we are feeling stable. So locking in here. Now what's going to create stability with those yoga blocks is some extra weight in place. So I'm using 2 kettlebells to position that. And as I say, this isn't something that you may need to do. I have particularly short legs, so this is something that I have to work with most hip extensions. Now I happen to know, because I've worked with this 45-degree hip extension a lot, that this second position is going to be the one that I want. So I'm going to place my feet onto those yoga blocks. I'm going to lock my ankles into the back pad so I've got stability. I'm working with a bent knee so that I can really bias the hip hinge. And now, as I come down, what I find is that the pad is much lower down and I am working from my glutes. So I can feel my hips pushing forwards. Now, for me, what I like to do is box myself into a container. I want feedback on my hips pushing forwards. So I'm going to take a foam roller and place that onto the pad. And then from here, I can feel that my thighs are now pushing exactly where I want them. My heels and my toes have pressure through them. And then as I come up, I can drive my hips forwards into the feedback of that foam roller that is sitting in front of my thighs. Now, as you've seen in many of the demonstrations, often what happens with the 45-degree hip extension is we turn this into a back extension, and sometimes it's specifically used for that purpose. But that would look like this. So here, now I'm using, you can actually put your hands onto your spinal erectors and feel that they are tight. There's a little bit of work happening in the glutes, but it's certainly not the main stimulus, and we really don't want to crank the spinal erectors. So to counteract that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive my hips forwards, pull my chin in towards my chest, not come up any higher than I can without back extension, and round my thoracic spine, the part of my spine behind my ribs. And you can see very little else is moving apart from the hinge of my hips. And if I pause in that top position and then try to lengthen the glutes as I go down, I can really find a great glute stimulus. Now, it's quite hard to find this end point of your glutes. So what you can do is use some feedback with a band. Now, the lighter band is obviously going to be less work for your glutes. Starting to move up the colors of the bands is going to be more work for your glutes. But the trade-off to that is that the lighter band isn't going to give you as much feedback as where you are in space as the red band. So I'm actually going to go in with the red band, but you may like to start off with the yellow band to see if it is enough before it starts to become part of the load. So once again, I'm going to place my feet so I can get good foot pressure. I'm going to take my foam roller to give me that feedback into my thighs. And then I'm going to place the band across my upper back, just across the shoulder blades. I like to bring my elbows inside because it helps me continue the sense of rounding in. Chin towards the chest, and then you'll see as I drive my hips forwards, I get this feedback from the band of a round back. If I was to go into this, I can really feel that I'm changing position of the spine. So the band gives me feedback to push against something. And then I'm really sure that I'm not coming up any higher than my glutes would have the availability to lift me. Okay, so how would we load this? Part of the reason that I put the plates underneath the feet is so that I can have the depth to add in some load. So 2 dumbbells. I'm still going to use, and here you might lower the resistance of the feedback so that it becomes a feedback tool rather than a progressive tool. And I'm going to set up in exactly the same way as I did. So get in, foot pressure, lock my feet, lock my knees so that the hinge is going to be the hips, and then take my feedback tool for my hip hinge, take it forwards. I'm going to get into my feedback for my back body, and then I'm going to catch hold of these dumbbells, which I've given myself a little bit of space with these elevated feet. Still not quite enough, but it will do. I'm going to hover the weights and then use the feedback of the band to continue the stimulus into the glutes. And I'm working on squeezing, finding the shortened position, and then lengthening. And squeezing, not just letting gravity pull me down. I want to squeeze and lengthen. If you wanted to do a more hamstring biased version of this, then we might remove that hip hinge exaggerator, keep the legs straight, and then use the hamstrings to extend the hips. But again, I want to make sure my chin is coming in towards my chest, and I'm only going up so far as the hamstrings connect up to the ischium, and making sure I'm not turning this into hamstrings and then suddenly using my back muscles to pull myself up higher. You will certainly feel that after a couple of reps.